June 3rd, 1942. The North Pacific, west-northwest of Midway Atoll. Four Japanese carriers cut through the dark sea with their running lights blacked out, their decks packed with bombers, their hangars smelling of aviation fuel, and their commanders believing that by sunrise they will begin the operation that breaks the American Pacific Fleet for good. On board Akagi, the flagship of Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo's first carrier striking force, the night is not quiet. Men move in red-shaded darkness. Armorers check racks. Mechanics listen to engines. Signal officers bend over coded messages. Somewhere below, a staff clerk records what war will later call routine: course, speed, formations, launch schedules, enemy assumptions. These are the diary lines of a fleet at war, not tear confessions, not poetry, not the private trembling of men who know the future, just entries, orders, and conclusions written with the confidence of a navy that has not yet learned how quickly certainty burns. The Japanese public will not be told what is about to happen here. Many ship records will vanish with the ships themselves. Survivors will be scattered, silenced, or hidden behind euphemisms. Yet on this night, before Midway, the commander's papers, logs, and action plans reveal something more frightening than fear. They reveal faith, faith in surprise, faith in timing, faith in the belief that the enemy is wounded, slow, predictable, and blind, and that faith is about to sail directly into an ambush. 6 months earlier, on December 7th, 1941, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor and tears open the Pacific War. Battleships burn in shallow water. American sailors drown in oil. The United States reels. But Yamamoto's most important targets are missing. The American aircraft carriers are not in port. Enterprise, Lexington, Saratoga, and their sisters survive, and their absence hangs over the Japanese high command like an unpaid debt. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto understands the danger better than most. He has studied America. He knows its factories, its fuel, its shipyards, its patience once awakened. Japan has won spectacular victories from Malaya to the Philippines, from Wake Island to the Dutch East Indies. But Yamamoto sees the clock behind every triumph. Japan cannot fight a long industrial war against the United States and win. It must force one decisive battle, crush the carriers, stretch its defensive perimeter, and make Washington consider negotiation before American production becomes unstoppable. Then on April 18, 1942, 16 B-25 bombers rise from the deck of USS Hornet under Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle and strike the Japanese home islands. The damage is militarily small, but psychologically explosive. Tokyo has been touched. The promise of an untouched homeland is broken. Yamamoto's argument hardens into urgency. Midway, a tiny coral atoll roughly 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii, becomes the bait. The plan is called Operation MI. It is ambitious, it is complicated, it is dangerous in the way only elegant plans can be dangerous. Nagumo's carriers will strike Midway first, wrecking its airfields and defenses. An invasion force will follow, carrying roughly 5,000 troops to seize the atoll. Yamamoto's main body, built around battleships including the giant Yamato, will remain hundreds of miles behind, ready to close the trap when American ships rush out from Pearl Harbor. At the same time, Operation AL will send forces north against the Aleutians, stretching American attention across the ocean. But two carriers that attacked Pearl Harbor are missing from Nagumo's spearhead. Shokaku is damaged from the Battle of the Coral Sea. Zuikaku has lost too many aircrew, so the force moving toward Midway is not 6 fleet carriers, but 4: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. They are still lethal. They carry elite pilots, experienced deck crews, and the prestige of 6 months of victory. Their commanders expect to strike first, and to strike a surprised enemy. But what if the enemy is already waiting? Among the men carrying this confidence are officers whose names will be tied forever to the disaster. Nagumo is a veteran surface officer commanding the most powerful carrier striking force Japan has ever put to sea. Rear Admiral Ryunosuke Kusaka serves as his chief of staff, trying to turn Yamamoto's broad design into workable orders on a moving flagship. Commander Minoru Genda, the brilliant air staff officer who helped shape Japan's carrier tactics, is ill during the operation. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, famous for leading the Pearl Harbor air attack, is aboard Akagi, but sidelined by appendicitis and unable to lead the strike. The machine is still formidable, but some of the mines that made it so dangerous are not at full strength. Across the Japanese formation, each carrier has its own personality and its own commander. Akagi is the flagship, the symbol. Kaga is large, heavy, and packed with aircraft. Soryu is fast and veteran. Hiryu, commanded by Captain Tomeo Kaku, with Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi aboard, carries one of the most aggressive spirits in the force. Yamaguchi is younger than many senior admirals, forceful and carrier-minded. If Nagumo represents disciplined caution, Yamaguchi represents the instinct to hit now, hit hard, and accept risk before the enemy can breathe. The written record of this night is therefore not one diary in one cabin. It is a web of orders, deck logs, aircraft rosters, scouting plans, and assumptions written into the machinery of the fleet. It records where the carriers are, when they will launch, how the search arcs will spread, which bombs are loaded, and what the commanders believe the Americans can do. That is the real secret. The Japanese commanders do not need to write that they are overconfident. Their operation writes it for them. In Hawaii, beneath the tropical heat and tension of Pearl Harbor, Commander Joseph Rochefort and the code breakers of Station Hypo are turning Japanese messages into fragments of meaning. The target is known only as AF. Rochefort believes AF is Midway. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz believes him. To prove it, Midway sends an uncoded message claiming trouble with its water system. Soon, Japanese traffic reports that AF is short of water. The trap closes in reverse. Japan thinks it is setting one. America is setting another. Nimitz has few carriers and no margin. Lexington is gone after Coral Sea. Saratoga cannot arrive in time. Yorktown is battered so badly that Japanese planners believe she may be finished. But at Pearl Harbor, repair crews swarm over her hull, patching wounds that should take months in only days. Yorktown returns to sea under Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher. Enterprise and Hornet sail under Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance, replacing the ill Vice Admiral William Halsey. 3 American carriers now wait northeast of Midway at a position called Point Luck. Nimitz reinforces Midway as if every crate may become decisive. Marine anti-aircraft batteries dig in around the airfields. The 6th Defense Battalion prepares guns and searchlights. Marine Fighting Squadron 221 waits with a mixed force of aging Brewster Buffaloes and a handful of Wildcats. Marine Scout Bombing Squadron 241 has dive bombers, some modern, some old and slow. Army B-17 arrive. Navy PBY Catalinas stretch their patrols over vast ocean. Even brand new TBF Avengers, detached from Torpedo Squadron 8, sit on Midway instead of Hornet, ready for a first combat mission that will be almost unimaginably costly. The American plan is not to defend Midway passively. It is to use the island as both shield and lure. Midway's aircraft will strike whatever they can reach. The carriers northeast of the atoll will remain hidden until Japanese search patterns and timing expose the enemy. Nimitz understands that he is risking the remaining U.S. carrier strength in the Pacific. If Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown are lost, Pearl Harbor may stand exposed again. But if they strike successfully, the Japanese offensive timetable can be shattered in one morning. This is the hidden truth on the night of June 3rd. Nagumo's command assumes the Americans do not know enough. Yamamoto's plan assumes the U.S. fleet will react after Midway is hit. The Japanese war machine is spread across thousands of miles, synchronized by radio silence and expectation. In the carrier force, staff officers prepare launch orders. On Midway, Marines wait under sweating helmets. At Point Luck, American flight decks are ready. Both sides are writing the night before battle into logs and memories, but only one side understands that dawn has already been arranged. There is another flaw moving unseen beneath the surface. Yamamoto's submarines are supposed to form a scouting line between Hawaii and Midway, a silent net to detect American carriers leaving Pearl Harbor, but they arrive late. By the time the submarine screen takes position, Fletcher, Spruance are already out, already waiting. A plan built to detect American movement has missed the movement that matters most. The Japanese command system has not yet failed dramatically. It has failed quietly before the battle's most famous minutes even begin. Before midnight, Japanese transport and support forces have already been sighted by American patrol aircraft. PBY Catalinas from Midway find part of the invasion group. B-17S strike without success. A PBY later torpedoes an oiler. These are not decisive blows, but they are warnings. They tell the Japanese that the operation is no longer completely invisible, yet the carrier's striking force remains undetected, and Nagumo still believes the decisive initiative is his. The question now is simple and terrible. When the sun rises over Midway, will confidence survive first contact with reality? June 4th, 1942. Before dawn, the sea is a sheet of black metal, and Nagumo's carriers turn into the wind. At about 0430, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu begin launching the first strike against Midway. 108 aircraft, including Type 97 attack planes, Type 99 dive bombers, and 0 fighters. The planes lift one by one into the gray horizon, their exhaust flames flickering and disappearing as they form up for the run toward the atoll. Below them, the carrier decks clear, and crews prepare for the next phase. Nagumo has kept reserve aircraft armed for naval targets because somewhere beyond the horizon, the American fleet is supposed to appear later, not now. On Midway, radar and patrol reports shatter the morning. At 0530, a PBY reports enemy carriers. Minutes later, another warning flashes across the island. Many planes are heading toward Midway. Marines scramble. F-2A Buffaloes and F-4F Wildcats claw into the sky against Japanese Zeros flown by veterans. The difference is brutal. American fighters stagger into combat against faster aircraft and more experienced pilots. Some are cut apart in flaming arcs. Others limp back shot full of holes. The sky over Midway becomes a tangle of smoke trails, fallen metal, and parachutes that may or may not open. The Japanese strike hits the atoll hard. Bombs tear into hangars, fuel tanks, seaplane facilities, and power installations. Sand Island and Eastern Island shake under explosions. Oil fires climb into the morning. Men dive into trenches as coral dust whips across their faces. The defenders fire everything they have, anti-aircraft guns hammering so fiercely that the air itself seems to vibrate. Yet the airfield is not dead. Runways remain usable. Anti-aircraft batteries still shoot. Aircraft have already escaped before the bombs arrive. Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga, leading the strike from Hiryu, sees enough to make a dangerous report. A second attack is necessary. That message reaches Nagumo at the worst possible moment. His reserve aircraft are armed to attack ships. Torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs wait for American carriers, the targets Yamamoto wants most. But if Midway's airfield survives, it remains an unsinkable enemy carrier behind him. Nagumo chooses to rearm his reserve planes for another strike on the island. Torpedoes are removed. Land bombs come up. In the hangars, weapons crews sweat over heavy ordnance. Fuel lines snake across decks. Aircraft are crowded below. The carriers are not helpless, but they are becoming crowded with the raw ingredients of catastrophe. Then Midway strikes back. The attacks come in fragments, not as one coordinated hammer. 6 new TBF Avengers and 4 B-26 Marauders come low over the water toward the Japanese ships. They are brave, almost suicidal. Zeros pounce. Anti-aircraft fire erupts. Torpedoes enter the water and miss. One damaged B-26 streaks toward Akagi so directly that men on the flagship believe it may crash into the bridge. Nagumo watches the attack pass, but the meaning is larger than the misses. Midway still fights, and every minute spent dodging torpedoes is a minute stolen from Japanese timing. More American aircraft arrive from the island. Marine dive bombers come in. Old Vindicators struggle through the sky. B-17 Flying Fortress is bombed from high altitude. Their bombs splash into the sea around maneuvering ships, throwing white towers of water beside gray hulls. Again, no decisive hit. Again, the Japanese evade. But evasive turns disrupt flight operations. Combat air patrol fighters burn fuel. Deck cycles stretch. Nagumo's staff is now managing not one battle, but several overlapping emergencies. Midway needs another strike. Enemy aircraft keep arriving. The reserve planes are being rearmed, and the sea to the east is no longer empty. At 0728, a scout plane from the cruiser Tone reports 10 enemy ships. The report is late, vague, and incomplete. It does not say carriers. It does not say transports. It only gives Nagumo a shape in the fog of war. 10 ships, far away, perhaps dangerous. Nagumo is forced into the decision every carrier commander dreads. Does he continue preparing the second strike on Midway, or does he reverse the arming process yet again and prepare to hit ships? At 0745, he orders aircraft not yet changed to keep their torpedoes. He asks the scout to identify the enemy force. The entire fate of the Pacific now depends on a delayed message from one aircraft. The Tone scout's delay becomes one of those small mechanical details that later seem almost supernatural. A catapult problem holds the cruiser's number 4 search plane back roughly half an hour. In a battle measured by distance and fuel, half an hour is not a clerical mistake. It is a door opening in history. Had that plane launched on time? Had it searched cleanly? Had it identified carriers earlier? Nagumo might have received a different morning. Instead, his decision cycle is poisoned by incomplete information, just as his hangars are being rearranged by hand. For a moment, Nagumo may believe he has time. The first Midway strike is returning and must be recovered. Aircraft cannot simply circle forever with wounded crews and emptying fuel tanks. Flight decks must be cleared. Landing planes must be brought aboard before another mass launch can happen. This is the mechanical reality behind the myth of instant decision. Carriers are not just weapons. They are moving factories, airfields, fuel depots, ammunition dumps, and traffic systems. If one part clogs, everything slows. And on the morning of June 4th, every part is clogging at once. At Point Luck, Spruance receives contact reports and makes the decision that changes everything. He will launch. He will not wait until the Japanese are closer. His aircraft may have to fly long distances and search wide ocean, but waiting risks being hit first. Enterprise and Hornet begin sending planes into the air around 700. Yorktown follows with a more compact strike. American pilots climb into Dauntless dive bombers and Devastator torpedo planes. Some have never seen combat like this. Some are flying obsolete aircraft with torpedoes that may not work. Many are about to fly beyond the edge of rescue. Hornet's air group runs into confusion. Much of it follows a course that does not find the Japanese carriers. Fuel drains away over empty sea. Planes turn back or ditch. But Torpedo Squadron 8 under Lieutenant Commander John C. Waldron breaks away, convinced the assigned course is wrong. Waldron's 15 TBD Devastators press on toward the enemy without fighter cover. They find Nagumo's carriers, and in doing so, they fly into a killing ground. The Devastators come low and slow, their torpedoes slung beneath them like doomed promises. Japanese Zeros descend. Machine gun fire rips fabric and metal. One plane splashes into the ocean, then another, then another. The formation keeps going because there is nowhere else to go. Torpedo wakes, slide toward Japanese hulls. and miss. Flames run backward from engines. Men are trapped in cockpits as aircraft hit the sea. Of the 15 planes of Torpedo 8 that launched from Hornet, only Ensign George Gay survives, floating in the Pacific under a seat cushion, watching the Japanese fleet move around him like a steel city. And still, the sacrifice is not finished. Enterprise's torpedo squadron, 6 attacks. Yorktown's torpedo squadron, 3 attacks. The result is nearly the same. Devastators fall. Torpedoes fail. Zeros stay low, drawn down again and again to slaughter the torpedo planes. From a narrow tactical view, the attacks fail. They score no hits. But war sometimes hides cause and effect inside minutes. The Japanese carriers keep turning. Their decks are not launching. Their combat air patrol is pulled down toward the waves. Above them, at higher altitude, American dive bombers are searching. The torpedo attacks also expose the terrible gap between courage and equipment. The TBD Devastator is slow, vulnerable, and outclassed. The Mark 13 torpedo is unreliable, often running too deep, too slow, or failing to explode. The crews know enough to be afraid, but orders and duty leave no path except forward. They fly at wave-top height toward carriers protected by Zeros and guns, needing to hold a steady course so their torpedoes can be dropped properly. To survive, they would need speed, fighter cover, surprise, and weapons that work. They have almost none of those things, and still they continue. Above the water, the Japanese fighter pilots perform with lethal skill. They slash through torpedo squadrons, then climb, then dive again. Their success seems total. From the bridges of the Japanese ships, the morning may look like proof that the carrier force can absorb anything Midway and the Americans send, but the Zeros are burning ammunition and fuel. Their altitude advantage is gone. Their attention is low. The sky above the carriers, the space from which dive bombers kill, is becoming dangerously empty. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey leads Enterprise dive bombers over the ocean and finds nothing where the enemy should be. Fuel is running low. The safe decision is to turn back. Instead, he keeps searching. Then he sees a thin line on the water, the Japanese destroyer Arashi, racing north after attacking the submarine Nautilus. McCluskey follows the destroyer's course. It is a small observation, almost accidental. It is also the hinge of Midway. Beyond the horizon, the Japanese carriers are recovering planes, rearming others, and preparing for the strike they still believe they can launch. At roughly 10:20, the American dive bombers appear overhead. For Nagumo, the timing is catastrophic. The carriers have survived Midway's attacks. They have survived torpedo squadrons. They are minutes from regaining offensive shape. Then the sky opens. SBD Dauntlesses tip into their dives, engines screaming, dive brakes rattling, pilots staring down at flight decks crowded with aircraft, fuel hoses, bombs, and men. The Japanese combat air patrol is low and out of position. Anti-aircraft fire reaches upward too late. The first bombs fall. Kuga is hit again and again. Explosions tear through her flight deck and hangars. Fueled and armed aircraft erupt in flames. Bombs cook off. Fire runs through the ship as if the carrier itself has become a furnace. Men are blown across compartments. Others are trapped behind walls of heat. Akagi, Nagumo's flagship, is struck by a bomb that detonates among aircraft and ordnance, turning a single hit into a mortal wound. Soryu is hammered by Yorktown's dive bombers and begins burning fiercely. In minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 fleet carriers are transformed from offensive weapons into floating funeral pyres. On Akagi, command breaks into smoke and heat. Nagumo's staff must leave the flagship. Men slide down ropes, cross twisted metal, and pass through air so hot it burns their lungs. Captain Taijiro Aoki and damage control parties fight, but the fires are beyond control. The carrier that led the Pearl Harbor attack is dying not in a grand gunnery duel, but in the chaos of its own aviation fuel and live ordnance. The records, charts, and war diaries that might have preserved the morning in Japanese ink are now in compartments filling with smoke. History is being written and destroyed at the same time. Only Hiryu remains operational. Rear Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi, aboard the surviving carrier, does not hesitate. If Japan is to salvage the battle, it must strike immediately. Hiryu launches 18 dive bombers escorted by 6 Zeros. They follow American aircraft back toward their carriers and find Yorktown. The American carrier's radar gives warning. Fighters rise. Anti-aircraft guns open, but Japanese pilots press through. Bombs hit Yorktown's flight deck and explode inside the ship. Boilers are knocked out. Smoke pours upward. Fletcher moves his flag to the cruiser Astoria. For a moment, Yorktown seems finished, but Yorktown's crew performs a miracle of damage control. Fires are contained. Boilers come back. The flight deck is patched. The carrier resumes enough speed to operate aircraft. Japanese pilots who return to Hiryu report that they have disabled an American carrier. They believe it is one of perhaps 2 or 3. When Hiryu launches a second strike, 10 torpedo bombers with 0 escort find Yorktown again. Because the ship is moving and launching aircraft, the attackers think they have found a different carrier. Torpedoes slam into her port side. Yorktown loses power and takes on a heavy list. The Japanese now believe they have crippled 2 American carriers. In reality, they have struck the same stubborn ship twice. This false hope matters. It keeps Japanese morale alive for a few more hours. On Hiryu, Yamaguchi prepares for what may be another strike, but American scouts are searching. A Yorktown aircraft finds Hiryu in the afternoon. Enterprise and surviving Yorktown planes are launched to finish the last carrier. Late on June 4th, Dauntlesses arrive over Hiryu. The carrier twists below them, but the bombs fall true. Hits smash into the flight deck and forward elevator area. Fires spread among aircraft. Hiryu, the last sword in Nagumo's hand, is burning. Night falls over a battlefield lit by carriers that refuse to die quickly. Akagi burns. Kaga burns. Soryu burns. Hiryu burns. The ocean reflects orange light beneath columns of black smoke. Destroyers move close to rescue survivors, their crews pulling oil-coated men from the water. Some sailors are burned beyond recognition. Some cling to wreckage. Some look back at the ships that had been their homes and see only fire from bow to stern. The proudest carrier force in the world has been broken in a single day. Yamamoto is far behind with the main body. This is one of the great ironies of Midway. The admiral who designs the trap is too distant to spring it. His battleships, including Yamato, are powerful but irrelevant to the carrier duel already decided beyond their reach. Radio silence, dispersed formations, and the complexity of the plan now become enemies of command. Yamamoto can order a night surface engagement. He can consider continuing. But without the carriers, the invasion of Midway is exposed. Without air superiority, battleships cannot restore what has been lost. During the night of June 4th and into June 5th, Japanese destroyers are ordered to scuttle the doomed carriers. Torpedoes are fired into ships that hours earlier had been symbols of national power. Akagi is abandoned and sunk. Kaga goes down. Soryu disappears beneath the sea. Hiryu lingers, and Yamaguchi chooses to remain with her. The men who survive carry wounds, burns, and knowledge that will not be freely shared with the Japanese people. The official language will be careful. The reality is not careful. It is screaming steel, boiling fuel, and sailors leaping from decks into burning water. The battle is not over. On June 5th, American aircraft search for retreating Japanese forces. Confusion still rules the ocean. Pilots misidentify ships. Strikes are launched at shadows and destroyers. The Japanese cruiser force suffers its own disaster when Mogami and Mikuma collide while maneuvering to avoid the American submarine Tambor. Their damaged hulls slow them. On June 6th, U.S. aircraft find them. Mikuma is pounded by bombs and sinks. Mogami survives but is badly damaged, her smashed bow and burning topside marking the retreat. with another visible sign of failure. Yorktown, too, fights for life. She remains afloat after the air attacks, and salvage parties work to save her. The carrier is wounded, but not yet dead. Then on June 6th, the Japanese submarine A-168 penetrates the screen and fires torpedoes. The destroyer, Hammond, alongside Yorktown, is hit and sinks quickly. Yorktown is struck again. The damage is fatal. On June 7th, the carrier rolls over and sinks beneath the Pacific. The United States wins at Midway, but it does not win without blood. By the time the battle ends, Japan has lost 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. It has lost the heavy cruiser Mikuma, hundreds of aircraft, and more than 3,000 men. Among the dead are irreplaceable mechanics, deck crews, engineers, and veteran airmen, the human machinery behind carrier warfare. The United States loses Yorktown, Hammond, aircraft, and more than 300 men. The numbers are stark, but the strategic meaning is even starker. Japan can replace some aircraft. It cannot quickly replace 4 elite fleet carriers and the trained teams that make them fight. The loss of the carrier crews is especially devastating because carrier warfare depends on specialized labor. A battleship can still be a battleship if many of its sailors are new. A carrier is different. It is a choreography of deck handlers, armorers, mechanics, signalmen, elevator operators, firefighters, pilots, observers, and air officers. The Japanese Navy has trained these teams through years of hard practice. At Midway, many of them die in hangars and engineering spaces, not in cockpits. Their loss cannot be counted only in bodies. It is counted in vanished experience. The concealment begins almost as soon as the retreat does. Defeat is too large to admit. The Japanese people are told of victory, or something shaped to resemble victory. The losses are blurred. The surviving wounded are separated, classified, and controlled. Families do not receive the full truth. Even within Japan's war system, the disaster is wrapped in silence. What the commanders wrote in official reports is not what the public is allowed to understand. Midway becomes not only a military defeat, but an information operation against Japan's own people. The public deception is not merely a lie in a newspaper. It is a strategic habit. Japan's leaders fear that admitting the scale of the defeat will damage morale, weaken faith in the Navy, and embolden rivals inside the military system. So the story is managed. Reports emphasize damage inflicted on the enemy. Carrier losses are disguised or released in fragments. Survivors find themselves treated almost as security risks because their bodies know more than the state wants spoken. In the silence around them, Midway becomes a wound Japan refuses to examine in daylight. This silence has consequences. A navy that cannot speak honestly about its defeat cannot fully learn from it. Survivors who understand what happened are dispersed. Painful lessons are buried beneath face-saving language. The Imperial Japanese Navy still has powerful ships. It still has brave crews. It still has dangerous commanders. But after Midway, the strategic initiative begins to shift. Japan will fight ferociously at Guadalcanal, in the Solomons, in the Philippine Sea, at Leyte Gulf, and across countless islands. Yet the direction of the war has changed. For the United States, Midway is more than revenge for Pearl Harbor. It is proof that intelligence, repair work, risk, and timing can overcome numerical danger. Rochefort's code breakers place Nimitz's carriers in the right ocean. Pearl Harbor's repair crews put Yorktown back into battle. Spruance launches at long range rather than waiting. Torpedo squadrons fly into disaster but pull Japanese fighters down. McCluskey follows a destroyer's wake. Dauntless pilots arrive at the one window when Japanese decks are most vulnerable. Victory comes not as a miracle alone, but as a chain of human decisions, each one fragile enough to fail. For Japan, the lesson is harsher. Its commanders are not fools. Nagumo is cautious because the situation is genuinely complex. Yamamoto is bold because he knows Japan needs a decisive battle. Yamaguchi is aggressive because hesitation will finish the fleet, but intelligence failures, rigid assumptions, late scouting, dispersed forces, and overcomplicated planning combine into disaster. The Japanese Navy enters Midway with courage and skill. It loses because courage and skill cannot rescue a plan built on false assumptions. The diaries that survive, the reports that are translated, the memoirs written later, and the ship records that vanish in fire all point toward the same truth. The night before Midway is not filled with commanders admitting doom. It is filled with professionals doing their jobs, believing their doctrine, trusting their plan, and preparing to execute orders that have already been compromised. That is what makes the story terrifying. Disaster does not always announce itself with panic. Sometimes it arrives while everyone is calm. In the years after the war, Midway becomes a symbol, but symbols can become too clean. The real battle is not clean. It is oil on water. It is pilots dying in obsolete torpedo planes. It is Japanese sailors trapped below decks as bombs explode above them. It is a wounded American carrier, repaired, bombed, repaired, torpedoed, and finally sunk. It is a Japanese admiral, hundreds of miles away from the decisive point. It is a scout plane, late by minutes, a rearming order reversed, a destroyer wake, followed by chance, a few minutes at 10:20 in the morning when the course of the Pacific War changes. The men who fight at Midway do not know they are living inside a turning point. The pilots diving on Kaga do not think in textbook phrases. The sailors on Akagi do not think of future museum exhibits. The Marines on Midway do not know whether help will arrive in time. The Japanese aviators on Hiryu do not know. They are launching from the last surviving carrier of a doomed strike force. They know only heat, noise, fear, duty, and the next order. History gives the battle meaning later. In the moment, meaning is survival. After Midway, Japan's expansion is checked. 2 months later, in August 1942, U.S. Marines land on Guadalcanal, and the war becomes a grinding struggle of attrition that favors American industry and logistics. New U.S. carriers, aircraft, pilots, and ships begin arriving in growing numbers. Japan's losses become harder to replace. The carrier force that had dominated the first months of the Pacific War never fully regains its early strength. The road from Midway does not lead quickly to Tokyo, but it points there. Yet Midway should not be remembered as proof that victory is inevitable once intelligence is good or bravery is present. Intelligence gives opportunity. Bravery pays the price. Man decides whether the opportunity is used. At Midway, all three meet in one narrow space. If Yorktown remains in dry dock, the American striking power is weaker. If Spruance waits too long, Nagumo may strike first. If McCluskey turns back, the dive bombers may never find the carriers. If Japanese scouts report clearly and early, Nagumo's decks may look very different when the Dauntlesses arrive. The battle is decisive precisely because it is so close to not happening that way. This is why the night before Midway still matters. On June 3, 1942, Japanese commanders sail toward a battle they believe they understand. Their operational records reflect confidence, not confusion. Their plan is bold, but it asks too much of distance, timing, secrecy, and luck. Across the ocean, American commanders wait with fewer ships, but better information. The Pacific holds both fleets in darkness, and the future rests on messages, sightings, launch times, and decisions made under pressure. By June 7th, the sea has swallowed the evidence men thought would last. Carriers lie on the ocean floor. War diaries are gone. Reports are edited by necessity, pride, and survival. Governments shape the story. Survivors carry the truth in scars, but the meaning remains visible. At Midway, the Imperial Japanese Navy loses not merely ships, but the illusion that victory can be planned so perfectly that the enemy becomes irrelevant. War does not punish only weakness, it also punishes certainty. And in the black water off Midway, certainty burns brighter than any carrier.